Save the Butcher!
Hi, this is Bob from HelpSaveTheButchers.com, and today we're going to talk about some basic merchandising on a boneless beef chuck shoulder clod, blade on. We're going to do some very basic items, some shoulder London broils, family packs, some singles, and some thin sliced shoulder steaks. And then we're going to talk about merchandising our blade, which could be a real value to the store if you build a following with it and talk to your customers and build up the sales on it. And as always, when merchandising on a shoulder or any other piece of meat, minimize your trim so you can maximize your gross profit. What we're going to talk about first is cleaning up the top of the shoulder clod, especially where it connects to the blade here, so we can see where our seam and where the nerve is and make our break proper. I'm going to turn it around. We're going to take the oyster out of the front of the shoulder clod. This is going to become for stew meat. It can be used for chuck cube steaks if you like. This is a good place to take them from. Another little piece on the side here. You should clean these up as you go. You don't want to turn around and leave these pieces of meat on the bench and have them give a chance at discoloring. And I'm going to cut them into stew. I'm not going to leave any large pieces of fat on my stew. I want to make sure when a customer looks at a chuck stew package that they're happy with it. That's our stew meat there. Now, the top part here, there's some fat on top that we're going to try to get down to the meat without cutting into the meat. And there's one strip of meat right here. It should be able to take out for a little bit of stew. We're going to clean up the top part of the shoulder here and make sure there's no big chunks of fat on this. When we go to slice our London broils, that it's clean. Going to turn it around, do this side also on the back end, just on the top. Do not cut into the meat. Now we're going to clean up this side of the shoulder clod where it meets the blade, and what we're looking for is the nerve, the top part where it came off the blade bone right here. It's a curve cut, and what you want to do is stay up against the nerve itself, leaving the shoulder clod on the clod and the blade meat on the blade to maximize your gross profit. Turn it a little bit here for you. I'm going to tell you, you do not have to go all the way through on your first cut. Matter of fact, I'm going to recommend you do is just find it and push alongside of it. But what I'm trying to do is stay up against the nerve. And then all of a sudden, you'll be able to just go straight down so that your shoulder London broil, when a customer turns that over, is going to be a good side to this steak without leaving a lot of the meat still on the blade here. Now we're going to turn around and clean up the blade itself. Blade is a great eating piece of meat, and if you can educate your consumer on the value of it, it'll also enable you to merchandise the clod a little bit better. Getting a better gross profit out of it. So we're going to turn it upside down. We're going to have it on its back. We're going to pull the fat up, be able to curve it. We're going to use our steak knife to clean the bottom and peel it. Now we're going to completely take off the excess fat on this, but I'm not going into the silver skin on the bottom of the blade itself. I just want to remove the fat, leave no chunks, and make it smooth. All the way to the end. Okay, there's our blade, turned upside down. Clean this fat up now. Handle it while you have it. Don't leave it there and have something to work on after. You want to make sure your bench is as clean as possible. The blade, the first thing I'm going to do, this is the front part of the shoulder clod. We're going to take this little bit of an oyster out, and we're going to see if we can get a piece of stew out of that. And we want to peel it out. We don't want to just cut it out. We want to go up against the fat without losing the meat. Take the extra fat off there. Now you're going to take this piece of fat here off. I'm going to take the meat here first, and this is kind of like an oyster type thing where it curves around under the blade and on top of the bottom flap. Okay. Now this piece of meat here, I'm going to cut in on an angle to go underneath the blade. You see how it goes under the blade here? I'm going to cut in on an angle, trying to seam it rather than cut through it. You see it there? Seam it rather than cut through it, not to ruin the meat. Put the blade aside and clean this up. Now this piece here, I removed the excess fat already. Then I'm going to put it down flat and use my steak knife to just skim it on the bottom. So I come up with a good piece of meat, clean for stew. Being the excess fat's removed here already, that's ready for hamburger. Now I'm going to clean up the top plate and prep this for slicing. And out of our top blade today, there's several cuts you can get out of it, but some very basic cuts. There's a thin sliced blade steak that makes an excellent sandwich steaks with a lot of flavor from the small end, and we're going to get regular blade steaks from the large end on this, which is a great eating steak marinated good on the grill. here we go. We're going to make sure where the nerve meets here that we take off any extra nerve. Okay. Also on this side, so that we get to the meat and through the nerve. Just to expose the top nerve to separate it from the bottom. Now, here's the sinew that came off from the blade bone. We're going to clean that off, take it off there. Put a knife under each end and pull in the opposite direction. Take off any extra meat that we don't want to leave it on. On the top of the blade here, there's also a nerve that runs under this piece of meat. I'm going to cut down through and try to get to the nerve without cutting into the blade bone itself, into the blade meat itself. And this is going to become stew. Now we're going to take this nerve off. Okay, at this point here, I'm going to square off the blade. Going to take the thin blade steaks off. We're going to package them 10 in an 8 tray, put it out as a sandwich steak type package. Going to square off this end of the blade. We're going to start out at a little bit of an angle on the thin sliced blade steaks to make a fuller cut. Okay, there's our thin sliced blades. We're going to cut the regular center cut blade steaks. Don't go all the way to the end. The end piece is going to be used for stew. It has too much nerve to it. Okay, now we're going to pack these up, and I want to show you how to pack on the thin sliced blade steak. Very important on blade steaks to pack them in order to make them look really well. We're going to package the thin sliced blade steaks now. We're going to try to make sure the symmetry, they're in order, and that the same amount of each blade steak is exposed in the package. And we're also going to try to make sure the package itself is full, all the corners from one end to the other. There's our thin sliced blade steaks. We're also going to use 2 pads on the bottom of our regular blade steaks, except we're going to stop packing from the large end, the opposite end from the small end, and we're going to pack facing in towards the center. As always, we're packing in order and trying to fill the tray. There's our regular blade steaks, nice looking package. You can also pack these in 10 trays. Now the next part we're going to do is we're going to cut the shoulder clod itself. Very basic cuts, London broil, thin sliced London broil, family packs. I'm not going to pre-trim the bottom, okay? I'm going to take it, the flat cut, I'm going to make sure that I make the steak as flat as possible. We don't want any angles on it. Make sure it's even. London broils should be a good inch, inch and a quarter. Anticipate the packing. Now we do a family pack. The first 2 are in a 12 tray together in my store, so I'm turning them down towards the center. I want them to have the pot that's going to be displayed facing up. So the first 2 steaks. So they're going to pack in order like that. Then I'm going to take another 2. We're going to face these towards the front cut instead of towards the back. Okay. Then I'm going to take some thins off the small end, okay? And we're just going to do a couple here on this piece. And they're going to go face up, packing towards the center. Okay. And then you have to make the decision on your last part. Is there enough there for another steak, or is it too far in? We can get a little bit of a steak out of that one there. So this is our thin shoulder steaks. We're going to pack 2 in an 8 tray. And they're always cut next to each other. There's our thin sliced shoulder steaks. Now we're going to pack a couple of singles on London broils. Single steak at single pad. Now we're going to pack our family packs, 2 in a 12 tray. And as always, I use a double pad when I'm putting 2 steaks in. And our family pack shoulder London broil. Next, we're going to cut the flat iron steak out of the blade steak. It's a 3rd cut. I had to get a new blade for this. And what I did is I've totally peeled it just like I showed you on the other blade, but I'm also took off the thin slice on this side. If you cut your flat iron steak from the small end, you're going to end up with a really thin steak, and we want to maximize it with the customer. And I'm going to start at the nerve end on this, find it, and try to stay up against it. You don't have to make big, bold cuts on this. It doesn't have to be one fell swoop. one flat iron. We're going to turn around, turn it over, and take it, do the same thing the other way on the back side. The nerve off there. Take your last nerve from the middle, clean it up, any excess red meat off of it. Those are our 2 flat iron steaks out of the boneless top blade. Great eating steak, a lot of flavor. It's becoming more popular with the customers. There we go. We have a basic merchandising of a beef chuck boneless shoulder clod. We did some very basic cuts you should be able to sell out of your case. We have our thin sliced blade steak. It's a great eating steak, and if you bring it out to the customer's attention and educate them to the value that it offers them, they'll appreciate it and buy it from you on a regular basis. We have our thin sliced shoulder steak here, also a value to the customer. We have our shoulder London broil. It's a value to those customers that are looking to feed a larger family for a reasonable price. Our chuck stew meat is always nice and lean. We don't want any chunks of fat in there. We want it to have eye appeal for our customer. Our boneless chuck blade steaks. Most customers wouldn't buy this if they saw it for the first time, but if you point out to them the value and how good this is on the grill when marinated, they will appreciate it. And you tell them, make sure you let me know how you enjoy that steak when you come back next time. We have our regular single pack shoulder London broil, and of course our flat iron steak there. So this is Bob from HelpSaveTheButchers.com. Remember, the secret to running a great meat department is in doing the basics really well.
Help save the butcher!